No,
Fuck
actually.
you. fuck.
There's the
you.
difference.
No,
Right there.
no. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Anime Club After Dark, the podcast that delves into all things anime, manga, and otaku culture related. I'm your host, Alex, but you can call me Senpai, and joining me tonight, we have our Wizard of Wait What, Shinoda.
When it rains, it pours.
That
Are
is
you talking
very
about your
true.
pussy?
Whoa.
I mean, you know.
And
you know.
our chivalry of Shota's Shotaro.
Voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir?
Damn Canadians.
Québécois ce soir?
No, God, no. All right, so before we actually get into what we're going to be talking about tonight, we do have a bit of sad news to pass on. So for those of you that follow the Gundam franchise or have followed it for a long time, you might already know this, but we do want to talk about it for just a second. So Gundam writer Yu Yamamoto passed away recently at the age of 71. He was, I guess you would say, he's a very prolific anime screenwriter. He didn't just work on the Gundam franchise, although he did work on quite a bit of the Gundam franchise. He also worked on things like Yatterman, Time Boken, Urusei Yatsura, a ton of other mech anime over the years. And he also, I didn't know this until I read the article that from Anime News Network that he also wrote novels as well. Did you know that, Shinoda?
I did not at all, actually. He wrote light novels?
No, not light novels, like actual novels.
Oh.
He wrote it under a different pen name, though. I think the name he used when he wrote novels was Amamiya Koichiro.
Interesting.
So I did not know that until I read this article. But yeah, he was a very not only just a prolific anime screenwriter, but he was also probably one of the biggest pillars of the Gundam franchise overall, in terms of the creative side, getting the stories out there. So I wanted to mention it. I don't think a lot of people who have, like, if you're a brand new fan of the Gundam franchise, you probably don't know who he is. But if you've been following it for the franchise for quite a while, you probably have heard the name before, even if you didn't know who he was. But anyway, so shall we move on?
Let's.
All right. So what we're actually going to be talking about tonight is kind of well, first of all, it was a topic that was mentioned by a member of our Discord server, Chris. So if you're listening, Chris, thank you for this. He brought up this idea for this topic, and we thought it was good enough for a full episode on. I don't know if this topic is going to be like deep enough for us to do like a full length episode of the podcast on, but we're going to try. So this episode of the podcast revolves around a very specific question, and that is, should anime be critiqued within a vacuum? And what we mean by that is, so occasionally there will be anime or manga or what have you that come out, and they're either heavily influenced by or directly inspired by another work of anime or manga that came before them. And the question that we're asking is, should you actually critique or review the new anime the same way that you looked at the old anime that it's based off of?
So do you want to tell the viewers what particular anime sparked this conversation?
Yes, I actually do. I was just about to get to that. So what really sparked this conversation, or this topic idea, was a conversation that was being had on our Discord server about the currently airing anime, Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai, or Bunny Girl Senpai is it's the short name for it. Because it is unquestionable to deny. You can't deny the fact that this anime, and I think that it's based on a light novel, I believe. The anime, it's an adaptation of a light novel, is based highly on the Monogatari series. It borrows so many elements from them. I almost said elephants.
And then you
swear to
did
God.
say elephant.
If there was an elephant, I wouldn't be surprised if they borrowed that too.
I wouldn't even be surprised. I would not even be surprised. But no, it borrows so many elements from the Monogatari series that, in my mind at least, it borders on actually stealing the entire story of the Monogatari series.
Which came
And
first?
I think that's part of the reason why I really, really don't like this show. It's not the fact that I think that by itself it would be a bad show. It's that because I've seen the Monogatari series. I love the Monogatari series. But this, up against the Monogatari series, it doesn't even hold half of a candle to the Monogatari series.
I wouldn't know. I haven't watched it.
Well, no, you've watched the Monogatari series, but you haven't watched Bunny Girl Senpai.
No, I haven't.
Yeah. And then, well, Shinoda has not watched the Monogatari series, but he's watching Bunny Girl Senpai.
Oh, man.
And I've watched both. So we have interesting perspective here. But no, it's an interesting discussion because I think there's a good question here about whether it's right or not to criticize or to critique and review something based on another work that it might be either tangentially related to or borrowing from. Now, I do want to make a big distinction here that for the purposes of what we're talking about tonight, we are not talking about things like intentional remakes or reboots, because that does happen in the anime industry from time to time, like Full Metal Alchemist and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Like, obviously they borrow a lot from each other because they're based on the exact same source material.
These are completely different works from different people we're talking about specifically.
Yeah, things from like different studios, different creators, different genres, but they borrow heavily from other works. That's what we're specifically talking about.
For example, the shonen genre.
Yeah.
Just that entire genre,
the entire genre,
honestly,
completely unoriginal. Yeah. I actually think there's a lot to be discussed in the shonen genre about that because there's so.
Oh, I'm gonna get into it once we're in this.
Yeah. But I think the thing we should start with first is this. Probably the central question in all of this is how exactly does the concept of objectivity and subjectivity play a role in how you either you view something or how you criticize it?
And I want to clarify that we're asking this because if you are criticizing something in a vacuum, you're basically saying you're making an objective criticism of it because you're not really taking it into any other account. You're saying it can have a merit just by itself.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that, Alex?
I think it's really easy to objectively critique something when it's something that is very, very new, doesn't seem to borrow much from anything. I think it's very difficult for me personally, and other people might be completely different, I don't know, but it's very difficult for me personally to objectively critique or review something when it so obviously borrows stuff from other works. I don't know if that's a failing on my part, or maybe other people are like that. Maybe most people are like that. I don't know.
Well, okay, you're confusing a lot of different things. So you just said objectively critique something for borrowing other works. So
I'm just saying I don't think that I can do that. I don't think anyone can personally.
Well, the correlation that I was trying to make with this question is that if you criticize it by itself, then you're being quote unquote objective, but if you relate it to other shows, then you're being subjective because you're using your own, you're just picking a random show and comparing it.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't even necessarily have to be random. It can be something that's linked to it in some way.
But
linked how?
The question is, why specifically are you choosing to compare it to that show? And the only answer is it's your own choice. You just feel because you watch the show and you think that it relates to the other show. There's no objective way to say you should. That's why it's subjective, is when you're comparing it between multiple shows.
Yeah, for sure.
And well, my personal opinion on this is that I subscribe to the extremist digibro ideology that there's no such thing as objectivity and that everything is subjective. So you can't really have you can't really have an opinion on a show without either consciously or subconsciously comparing it to the other shows that you have watched, or the other books that you've read, or the other stories that you've experienced, or your own experiences in life. So I don't think you can critique something in a vacuum because it's just impossible.
I think I think you're mostly right. I think if you had watched anime for the first time, I think you wouldn't have any other anime to compare it to, so you can really, if you're just comparing anime, you could objectively like critique the very first anime that you watched because you don't have anything to compare it to.
I mean, but you've read other stories or you've watched other stories. Like anime is just another story, really.
It's another medium, yeah. I for the most part, I kind of agree with that. I think that there's some elements of fiction that can be critiqued, objectively. But I think by and large, a lot of it is subjective. I would say like 99% of it is subjective.
What do you think, Shinoda?
Difficult. I have to.
Like, he just narrows it down to one word: difficult.
I can hear his brain short circuiting.
Yep.
I mean, honestly. So here's the thing. You are right about the fact that you really can't objectively critique something once you heard anything or seen anything. You'll always be subconsciously comparing it to something, even if you don't mean to. But I do think if you so put in the effort, you can compare it objectively. But it's difficult to do it that way. It is nigh impossible. Well, I wouldn't say nigh impossible, just you have to go through a lot of ropes to do it.
I feel like the closest you could get to objective is someone who has watched and read every single thing and has lived every single life, which is obviously impossible. But I think that would be the closest you could get to objective.
Or you had like lived in a literal vacuum your entire life where you'd never been exposed to anything, and then you're exposed to something for the very first time, and it's like, oh.
Which
I think that's
is
impossible. Because
it's not realistic.
Impossible. There are still tribes of humans that are
it's
completely separate from the rest of
but
everything.
Those tribes have like stories that they tell each other.
True, but
yeah,
like, you're right. It's not impossible. It's unrealistic, but it's not impossible.
I'm pressing.
But I
X
think
to
by
doubt.
and large, I think by and large most people who have reached a certain age, let's say 18 plus, you've experienced enough to where you can critique stuff subjectively and have, like, assuming you haven't lived a completely isolated life, you can look at stuff based on your own experience and think, well, do I like this? Do I not like this? What don't I like about this? What do I like about this?
Yeah, and I think the main, like, there's this whole hubbub about the bunny girl and Monogatari, and I guess the backlash against comparing the two are, I assume, from people who haven't watched them both, which is the whole impetus for this question, like, should anime be critiqued within a vacuum? Because a lot of people don't want to hear opinions by other people who do not share the same experience, where these two people don't share the same experience, and they're like, why are you criticizing this show? Why are you bringing this random other show into the mix? Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And I think that problem that people have with comparing shows, that's just a problem they're going to have to live with, because they're just going to have to tolerate that other people have different experiences than them, and then therefore they have different opinions, and, you know, there's no one right opinion, and you're just going to have to live with that reality that diversity exists and that we're not all the same person. So.
I think you're absolutely right about that. I think that actually kind of speaks to a larger problem in Western society right now, that so many people are unwilling to listen to people who have a different opinion. Like, I don't like Bunny Girl Senpai at all, and I think like 90% of that stems from the fact that I've watched all of the Monogatari series, and I think it does what Bunny Girl Senpai tries to do, but so much better. But I want to hear from people who like this show because, and I specifically want to hear from people who have watched both and actually still think that Bunny Girl Senpai is a good show because I want to hear their thought process behind it. But I'm also willing to listen to people who haven't watched one or the other to hear what they actually think. And I think that's part of the problem with like anime fandom in general is that there's so many people who get so into their own opinions. It's like their opinion becomes like a part of their identity, and like, how dare you question my opinion?
Yeah. It's called being
But
uptight and having fucking tight ass panties.
why don't you tell us about that?
Oh, honey, I could write a book.
I'm sure you could.
Okay, so this conversation made me think of something that we didn't write down on the doc, but is it like we've talked about how it's bad how certain shows are basically copycats of other shows, but can that be enjoyable? Like for me personally, I kind of like it with how repetitive the shonen genre is, or the sports genre, which I guess is a subset of the shonen genre. I kind of enjoy the fact that they're all just copycats of each other. What do you guys think?
I think to a certain extent, yeah, it certainly can be. I think when you say the word copycat, I'm assuming you're meaning like it borrows certain elements but doesn't borrow entire stories.
I think you're more specifically talking about tropes. Am I guessing that right?
I mean, well, it depends on how much of the story is copied.
Well, it's like, okay, I can give you a very specific example that shows up in a wide variety of shonen anime. The idea of a tournament arc. Like, that's in so many shonen anime. And I'll be in the complete minority here. Like, tournament arcs are stupid. Are really stupid. And it makes me lose so much respect for a shonen when they actually include one.
Really?
And
Why?
it does.
Why do you?
Because
Why don't you? Why are they stupid?
okay, the tournament arc stopped being innovative and cool after Dragon Ball Z did it.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
honey.
but ever since then, it hasn't been good. It hasn't been cool, and it's so. Who cares?
Oh, girl, you sound like a jaded old shonen hoe.
I can understand where he's coming from. I have to disagree though, but I do understand where you're coming from. It's just a played out trope at this point.
Well,
I
it's like
personally
it
enjoy
feels like
it, but I know what you're saying.
well, it feels like at this point that some people only put tournament arcs in shonen anime and manga just for the sake of having a tournament arc at this point. That's what it feels like. And it's like the whole tournament arc in MHA, it was so bad because it felt like it was just there just to have a fucking tournament arc.
I will say I didn't like the tournament arc. Wait, you read it?
Yeah, I've read the manga.
Okay. What?
Wait.
Okay, I liked the
Hold
tournament
on.
arc in the manga. I didn't like it in the anime though. So that's funny.
It was just it just felt like the whole thing was there just for the sake of having a tournament arc, and like
Well, okay,
why?
but like that is so MHA to just do that. That's so typical of MHA.
I like how we've got a new category now. It's like that's just so MHA. Just it's almost like there's the whole tagline in the JoJo's franchise, like it just works. Like that's just MHA. I don't like tournament arcs. I think they're so that whole idea has been played out ad nauseum to the point at which I don't even like the idea of a tournament arc anymore.
I guess.
And I think that kind of
You
goes
just
to
haven't
what you're
seen the
saying.
Hunter x Hunter tournament arc, so you don't know what's
Oh my
good.
god. Yeah. Try to sell me a tournament arc by telling me to watch a tournament arc.
Exactly.
Good idea. Good idea. But I do think that kind of plays into what you're asking about, like, you know, copycat stuff. Like, I think to a degree that can be entertaining, especially if it's done in some kind of, like, an element is done in some kind of new, innovative way that you've never seen before, or if it's done so much better than than it's ever been done before. But I think if it starts getting done just for the sake of getting done, that's when it becomes a problem for me.
I guess.
Shinoda.
I hmm, I would say even if it's being done just for the sake of it being there, if it according to the standard, what's wrong with that?
I, I hate the idea that fiction can be written on a formula. I just hate that idea.
But that's true for almost any genre.
I don't. It doesn't have to be though.
It doesn't
You
have
can
to be,
actually
yeah,
try to
sure,
do stuff
but
innovative every once in a while.
Everything's been done before, honey.
That's not true.
Oh, honey, you believe that's not true?
I don't. I don't think it's true at all. I think there's a lot of stuff that's been done before, but you can always, if you're actually a creative person, I think that you can come up with something that's never been done before, or at least if you're working on something that has been done before, do it better than anyone else has ever done it before.
So does
it's
it only
possible to do it. It's just not easy.
Oh, well, fucking creative writing isn't supposed to be easy. If it were, everyone would be doing it.
Fair enough.
So I think this kind of actually leads into another question that we have. It's at what point does it actually become justifiable to compare two different works?
Okay, so I have a particular two anime in mind for this question that was really controversial when they came out, and the original anime was Attack on Titan, and the copycat, quote unquote, anime was the train anime. What is it, Cabaneri?
Cabaneri.
Yeah, Cabinary.
There was like a huge hubbub about how it's a copycat of Attack on Titan and it's just bullshit. And then there was a lot of people backlashing, being like, "Why are you comparing this to Attack on Titan? There's no reason to do that."
Well, that was also compounded by the fact that they were done by the same studio.
Exactly. So one of the points of why it was justifiable to compare the two was that they were done by the same studio.
Well,
and-
can I jump in here?
Go ahead.
I definitely think that it was very valid to compare both of those on a lot of their technical merits, because if you look at the animation style for both of them is pretty similar. The character designs, I mean, the way the characters are drawn are pretty similar. Both of them have good soundtracks.
I think Hiroyuki Sawano was involved in some way in Cabaneri.
But I think surely on the technical stuff, it was very valid to compare the two. I don't think they have the same story at all,
Really?
personally.
Really? The first episode was literally the same thing. Anyways.
Okay, I will give you that. The first episode is pretty much the exact same.
And what made it worse was that Cabaneri was an original. So it had no background. It had no, like, long-standing history that could back it up as a legitimate story. It was just,
it had no established fan base either.
It was just the anime creators just pulled the story out of a hat, and that's how it felt. And clearly I am of the opinion that it's very justifiable to compare the two, and that this is a bad example of copying another anime, because I just felt that there was no originality in Cabaneri, and that it was a cheap money grab, which worked because it sold really well, but
Yeah,
still
it was
cheap. And I could not appreciate the story at all, because I felt it was just an insult to Attack on Titan. So
Agreed.
See,
It was honestly a shame because looking at it, it honestly did have potential, but they completely ruined it.
And that's exactly how I feel when I compare Bunny Girl to Monogatari. I feel like they're trying to imitate Monogatari, but and they say that imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. But the way Bunny Girl Senpai is doing it, they're actually insulting the Monogatari series because they're doing it so badly. Now, apparently it's working though, because it has an insanely high rating on Mal, and everyone's saying it's the best anime of the year.
Girl, it's one of those animes that as soon as it stops airing, nobody will remember anything about it. I'm telling you.
I don't know about that. We'll see. I think it will be remembered, but we'll see as time goes on.
This is coming from the opinion of a person who hasn't watched a single episode. So yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I know that you've sort of fallen out of love with the Monogatari series show, but
I'm bored.
I know, but you gotta admit that for all of its faults that you see in the Monogatari series, at least it has staying power because it's still around.
I guess. I don't know
I
what.
it would be it would be. I'm just saying it'll be interesting to see if the Bunny Girl Senpai show has the same like pull, because I don't think it will. I think that people will eventually. I think that people, once this show finishes airing and people like me tell these people who haven't watched the Monogatari series, like, hey, if you like this show, go watch the Monogatari series, and those people will be like, okay, I'll go watch it, and they watch it, and it's like, wow, this is so much better, and it's like it's like the same story but done by someone who's competent at writing. I think people will just kind of forget about it.
I think
I
it's
think
just
that
forgettable in general.
I think that the point at which it becomes very justifiable to compare two different works is if they have something in common. Whether it's like a similar tone, a similar setting, whether they're in the same genre, they have the same creator, done by the same studio. Like just something that compare a similar art style.
So why is it justifiable to compare Bunny to Monogatari?
Because they have okay, so you know how you said the first episode of Cabaneri was exactly like the first episode of Attack on Titan?
Yeah.
The first episode of Bonnie Girl Senpai is exactly like the first episode of Bakemonogatari.
But
It's not even exactly it is literally the same story.
But there's no
different
real
characters.
technical or tangible relation between the two. It's just how they told the story.
Not that I know of. I don't think they're being done by a different studio. Bunny Girl's being done by Cloverworks. The Monogatari series is done by Shaft. I don't who wrote the light novel. I know that Nisio Isin writes the Bunny Girl writes the Monogatari series light novels. Who's the author? Hajime Kamoshida writes the light novel for Bunny Girl Senpai. I don't know. Maybe they know each other in real life. I don't know.
So then, do you think it's justifiable because they have a similar episode?
I think it's justifiable because they not only have the same not even a similar, it's the same first episode. I think that a lot of the subsequent episodes of Bunny Girl Senpai borrow even more elements from Bakemonogatari. So just judging by that, I think that it's worthy to compare the two. And the fact that a lot of the characters in Bunny Girl Senpai can relate directly to characters from the Monogatari series.
I feel like I instinctively want to agree with you, but I feel like there's no tangible way to say that there's something there to compare that makes it justifiable to compare the two. So honestly, I think it's very hard to answer the question of what is justifiable to compare two works.
I will say there is one thing they do have in common: the Monogatari series and Bunny Girl Senpai. It's the only. There may be more, I don't know, but I can tell you there is at least one thing they have in common.
Okay, what is it?
Both of them have parts that have aired in fall 2018.
Wow, you're really stretching it.
Yeah, that's...
I mean, it's something.
Come on, dude.
It is something.
I just
Come on, dude.
I lost my support for this argument.
I mean, I'm really stretching it there, I know, but there might actually be something they do have in common deep down that I don't know. They might have, like, someone who's worked on the music of the Monogatari series may be working on the music for Bunny Girl Senpai. I don't know.
Well, here's my thing. Even if, say, the first episode is the same, it is still different works, and each work has their own merit, so why just judge off of one single episode?
It's not, well, okay, so the reason I say the first episode is because the first episodes of both Bakemonogatari and Bunny Girl Senpai are almost identical. All you have to do is change the setting and change the characters, and it's basically the exact same story.
Is Bunny Girl a harem?
No,
Fuck
actually.
you. Fuck
That's the
you.
difference. Right there.
No. Fucking, I've said this so long. The Monogatari series is not a harem. Fuck all of you out there who say that.
Alex is living in his delusional La La Land.
Also, not to spoil Bunny Girl Senpai, but I will have no actual illusions of actually caring a damn if I spoil it for you, because it is that bad. They even go so far as to have a character in Bunny Girl Senpai who gets rejected by the main character who likes him, Just like Hanakawa gets rejected in the Monogatari series. Oh, and get this, she's obsessed with cats. Haha.
You just sound like a salty hoe.
I'm just saying that the fact that some people who have seen both won't point this out is just amazing to me. And it's like, I think when we were having the discussion about this on our Discord server, it's like Chris even said it. It's like watching a shaftless Monogatari. And it's like, well, like half of the reason I watch the Monogatari series is because it's animated by Shaft. They have such a great style and like they put so much oomph in it that it's like, that's fucking why I watch it. They make the story, as good as the story is already, so much better because of the style that they use. Which I think leads us into another great question to ask. So, do you guys think there's actually a difference between borrowing story elements from a previous work and stealing them?
No. I think it's fair game to borrow anything. Except for like names.
Like names of characters and places and stuff?
Yeah.
So like if there was literally a character in Bunny Girl Senpai named Koyomi Araragi, you'd say, that seems like stealing.
Yeah.
I
Well,
would
now that
have
I'm
to-
thinking about it, if there was like literally the same anime but they changed the names, then it would still be pretty shitty. So I'm not entirely sure.
I think
See,
you
that-
have to go to more specifics with that.
Specifics in terms of like the actual elements being borrowed or stolen.
Yeah, because if it's something more general, like for example, in the going back to this shonen animes with tournament marks, you wouldn't say, "Hey, this tournament arc was stolen by this tournament arc." No, it's just a generic tournament arc. Like they're just there. It's a standard.
That is true. I've never actually... Well, there may be someone out there that's done it, but I've never actually seen someone compare tournament arcs directly between two different anime.
It is out there. If I remember right, I think Masako X has actually done it.
But it's not done very often. A lot of people just judge tournament arcs by how good it is within the story that they're in.
Yeah. Because the
That's weird.
shonen fans are blind.
I never thought about it like that. It's interesting. Oh, maybe it's because most shonen fans are young.
I don't think so. Well, maybe. I don't know.
Or is it because most shonen fans are male? That's right. I put it out there. Drinking this tea.
Fucking misogynistic.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, it is
This-
true though.
Anyway. Okay, so I want to point out I have the reason I asked this question is because I do think there's actually a difference between borrowing and stealing story elements, and that's this: if you're borrowing story elements, you're borrowing you're using a very small percentage of stuff from other stories and using it in your story in a different way. If you're stealing story elements, it's a much larger percentage, but you're not even trying to hide the fact that it's not even different.
Well, okay. What this makes me think of is like Little Witch Academia is clearly blatantly copying Harry Potter.
And see, I knew you were about to say that, but I gotta. So when I went to Otakon this year, and the some of the staff for Studio Trigger were there, they got asked this question in a panel that I was at, and almost all of them had never watched Harry Potter. And I found it so difficult to believe. So either they're telling the truth and they really had no knowledge of it, and it's just an amazing coincidence that there's so many story elements that are the same, or they're just lying.
I have to believe they're lying because, like, shitty
I
as
feel
an
like
author
the-
fucking J.K. Rowling might be, she did create something fantastic, and that's affected so entire generations of peoples.
I mean, the main appeal of Little Witch Academia is that it's a female Harry Potter. Like, it's like digging into the Harry Potter demographic.
Oh yeah, like if you're a fan of Harry Potter and you've never watched anime before, the first thing I would recommend is Little Witch Academia.
Exactly. So, but I know you have a favorable impression of Little Witch Academia. So, how does that relate to borrowing and stealing story elements?
That's actually an interesting question. I think, well, okay, so a lot of my love for LWA comes from the fact that I love Studio Trigger. But I also really like Little Witch Academia on its own. I think if it had been done by any other studio, I'd still probably love it just as much. But I think it's a lot easier for me to reconcile the fact that it borrows a lot from Harry Potter because it's from two different mediums. Like, one, Harry Potter is both a book and a film franchise.
So it's all
whereas
right
Little Witch...
to culturally appropriate from other countries, but not from the same country.
Sure, if you believe that cultural appropriation is a real thing, I suppose.
Oh, we're not going to go into that?
I mean, you brought it up, sir, not me.
I mean, I was being facetious, but...
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's hypocritical on my part, but that's kind of how I view it. It's like, it's a completely different medium. But you're also right in the fact that it is basically an all-female Harry Potter.
You know, I am very much like you in that I criticize some works for borrowing elements, and then I like other works, and I don't. I really... It's
for
just,
borrowing just as many elements.
Exactly, yeah. Like... shonen in sports and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, simplistic anime, I feel like when I watch a shonen or a sports anime and then it begins the show setting my expectations that this is going to be a very simplistic story, I can forgive the anime for, you know, not being super innovative because that's what I was expecting in the first place. But like in other shows, like So Ajin is a show, and I feel like it.
Yeah, it's a show. Sure,
it is
we'll
a show. I think it's called Demi-Human or something in English, and it borrows a lot from Tokyo Ghoul. And I respect Tokyo Ghoul for a lot of the details in the story, particularly the manga. So when I'm watching Ajin, I'm way more critical of it because I come in expecting a very detailed story, so when it's borrowing a lot of elements from a already established story, I'm way more critical. So maybe that's the difference for me.
Maybe, but do you think so? You've obviously you've watched and / read both Ajin and Tokyo Ghoul. Do you think that Ajin, the way it borrows its elements, is done in like a flattering way towards Tokyo Ghoul?
I think it tries. It tries to be to take its own twist on the story. I don't think it succeeds, but I definitely see it. I don't think it's lazy, but I think it just fails.
Okay, so you think that they genuinely tried to do good service to the elements that they borrowed. They just didn't do it necessarily the right way.
Yeah.
See, I think that's completely the opposite with Bunny Girl Senpai. I think it literally the author of this light novel series set out to just blatantly steal as many elements as he could from the Monogatari series and still get away with it.
So maybe that's it's just how it feels to you. Does
maybe
it?
I mean, and that goes back that plays back into the whole subjectivity thing as well.
Yeah.
You're being awfully quiet, Shinoda. God, his brain. I can smell the smoke from here, from all the gears turning.
I'm trying to figure which side I'm on, okay?
We both made such good points.
Yes,
can't figure it out.
Both of you did. I was fully prepared to be completely against you, Alex. Now I'm like, fuck.
Let's be honest. Every single episode, you guys come on here and you think, how can I piss off Alex today?
I mean,
that's just show.
I thought you were into DP.
Whoa. Let's not get into my personal life, sir. We're waiting to
piss off. I haven't read them, but I've watched both the Ajin and Tokyo Ghoul. I can see where they borrow stuff, but I would say they're pretty independent of each other, if anything.
Thinking about it even more, I'm thinking about the really lazy borrowing. Like in both Tokyo Ghoul and Ajin, the main character is black haired. He has a best friend who's orange haired. And then the orange haired best friend gets separated from the black haired main character. And there's this big, like, separation drama. And I'm like, you just have to make them look so similar and, like, the same exact traits. Like, this is very, very blatant.
Okay, I can
what you're
agree
doing.
with you on the premise. They're pretty similar, but because of the characteristics of the main characters, it's not really that similar.
Yeah, you're right. The main characters have different personalities. And the shows definitely diverge the further they go into their respective stories. But like again, we've been having so much gripes with first episodes, and the first episode of Ajin was borrowed a lot from Tokyo Ghoul. Even like in both first episodes, the main character is involved in an accident and a near death accident, and then that triggers the supernatural effect, which I'm just like, very creative, you know?
This is like what, the third or fourth first episode like example that we've given in this
Maybe
this whole
anime
thing?
producers just need to get a better template for
Well, it makes
first
me
episodes.
wonder if a lot of this, since a lot of this seems to be centered around our first impressions of an anime or a manga, then maybe when we watch these first episodes and we realize that these first episodes are very similar to other first episodes of things that we've liked and watched, and it's just not done as well, do you think it maybe gives us a really sour taste in our mouth and it makes us less willing to give the rest of the show a fair chance?
Again, like,
Nah, you're crazy. What are you talking about?
Thank you for letting me down easy.
Like when Ajin was first announced, I was actually really excited for it because I wanted more of Tokyo Ghoul, but like some of the lazy copying parts was not as great. So
Well, I can think of another thing that's airing right now that borrows heavily from something else, like the fucking Gridman. It's basically a Ultraman ripoff, but I'm still loving it because it actually takes the Ultraman premise and like plays around with it and has fun with it. And I think that it's being done in a very like what's the word?
Tasteful?
It's not being tasteful is one way to put it. Yeah, it's being done in a way that's not very the source material, I say source material in quotation marks, that it's borrowing from, it's portraying it in a good light, like, and it's not even trying to hide the fact that it borrows from Ultraman because they fucking mention Ultraman a dozen times in the fucking show.
Do they actually?
Yeah, it's like one of the characters always says, well, this is what happens in Ultra.
Oh,
like-
right. For context, I haven't actually ever watched Ultraman.
Well, as someone who has watched Ultraman and is now watching Gridman, I can tell you it borrows a lot. But it's doing it in a very playful and very, like, not insulting way. It's being very generous to what it's borrowing from. And it's even mentioning the fact that this isn't an original in the show.
I mean, I
And
guess
I think that's part of the reason why I like it, because it's not going out of its way to portray itself as being original.
I mean, that's very meta and comedic, though. So I think there's a limit to how that can apply to other things.
True, but I'm just saying in this particular instance, that's probably why I like Gridman, even though it's blatantly ripping off Ultraman.
That sounds like it would piss me off, but I don't know. I haven't seen either.
But they're not just ripping it off. They're honestly paying homage and respect to it.
Yes. That was the word I was looking for earlier, homage.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're doing it in a very tasteful way, and they're doing it to be respectful of people who are coming in new to that have maybe never watched Ultraman before, and for people who have watched Ultraman in the past, it's like a wink and a nod. I think that's why I like Gridman so much, even though it's blatantly ripping off Ultraman, and I don't like Bunny Girl, even though it's blatantly ripping off Monogatari.
This is not meta.
Maybe. I mean, you know what? It would be very interesting if at some point during Bunny Girl, like they said, so have you read the newest novel in the Monogatari series? It's like, oh, haha.
You're just a reference whore. Anything with a reference, you get a boner.
I do like references, yes. I especially have found out that I like references to real things because I fucking found out that the chicken restaurant in Zombieland Saga is a real thing, and now I want to go.
Fun fact, it's actually made appearances in other animes as well, and manga.
See,
It's famous, period.
That. I didn't even realize. Like, I want to go to Saga now. I really do. Oh, man. All right, so I want to wrap this up with one final question, and it kind of bleeds off of what we were just talking about with the difference between borrowing and stealing. Do either of you think there's like an actual quantifiable limit to the amount of material from a previous work that you can actually borrow or use in a new work for a new work to still be considered original?
I think there is. It has to. If you're gonna be borrowing certain characteristics, settings, you have to try to keep it to a minimum. I mean, let's be real. Nothing in this world is really original anymore. It's very difficult to be. A lot of ideas have been already created and played out. That being said, it's fine to borrow. It's just how it is. But if you do it way too much, it's noticeable, and everyone's just gonna constantly compare, like we're doing now. But if
Yeah.
you try to keep it to a minimum and or at least borrow from so many different sources, it's considered new, you're gonna be fine. What do you guys think? That's my take on it.
Joe.
I don't know. I want to be as liberal as possible and say you can borrow as much as possible, but I'm
Just give them all the rope so they
even
can hang
if,
themselves with it.
like, even if I'm okay with you borrowing everything, doesn't mean that it'll necessarily be good. You still have to like write it well. But honestly, I think I'll stick with like if it's a simple story. If I'm not really looking, it's like it depends on the type of story. If you're telling the viewers that you're gonna do a very simple story, then that's fine if you don't do anything crazy new. But if you tell the viewers that you're gonna do something crazy new, you better do something crazy new. So
yeah, I completely agree. I really do. I think that once you get to a point where you're promising your viewers or your readers a certain thing and then you don't deliver, that's when it's like, well, I've seen this before. Why am I reading this? Why am I watching this?
is Bunny Girl a mystery? No.
No.
Well, it is kind of, sort of. It's got this thing. Well, okay, so Bunny Girl revolves around this concept called puberty syndrome, which is this, like, people being afflicted by supernatural, like, phenomena, which sounds a lot like the fucking stuff that goes on in Bakemonogatari.
So, like, the main appeal of Monogatari to me is, like, number one, the directing, and number two, the dialogue. And it's just, like, overly intellectual, which is very, very detailed, and it's, like, you can't replicate that. You have to it's too difficult to replicate. So how does Bunny Girl steal from it? Like, what is the main appeal of Bunny Girl trying to go for?
Okay, so this isn't like an actual example from either show, but I think I can actually answer your question by doing this. So Bunny Girl tries to sound like the Monogatari series, like in its dialogue, right? But they try and do it without actually writing engaging dialogue. They try and do it with like timing and like, you know, how words are spaced out. So I'll give you an example. Like in something like Bunny Girl Senpai, well, not in Bunny Girl Senpai, the main character would try and tell someone that things change over time by looking at a blade of grass, and he would go to another character and say, you know, grass is green. Whereas the exact same conversation could take place in the Monogatari series, and Koyomi would turn to, I don't know, Hachikuji or Hitagi and not just say, I've been thinking about grass recently. And then he would go on like some 15-minute long-winded conversation about the nature of the color green and how grass grows, and he would end it by saying something like just as profound, like, and you know that's why grass is green. That's the difference between how dialogue is handled in Bunny Girl and Monogatari.
I got confused there. So Bunny Girl just doesn't ramble on?
It doesn't have the same gravitas in its dialogue that Monogatari has.
Isn't that good, though? That clearly marks it as different, then.
It's definitely different, but it's also trying to portray itself in the same way as Monogatari in that sense, where it's trying to like say these like profound philosophical things in its dialogue, but it doesn't have nearly the same gravitas in the words that they're using to do it.
Well, this makes me think
So
of
they
something.
don't have as much exposition about it. What's so bad about that?
That's the appeal of the Monogatari series.
So
like,
that
there's
means
literally,
Bunny
like,
Girl
this,
is
I think,
different due to that purpose, which is a good thing from what you've been saying, because you don't want them to be so similar, right?
No, it's saying that it's trying to be something that it's not.
Well, this makes me think of something. Like how Monogatari does something very complicated and unique in its dialogue. Similarly, the Tatami Galaxy does something very unique and complicated in its storytelling, in that it has a super, super fast pacing. The scenes go by really fast. The characters talk really fast. And it all happens really quickly and it's very hard to understand. But it's a good show. I definitely recommend it. It's very symbolic and metaphorical. It's only 12 episodes. And a show that does a very similar thing to that would be Occultic 9, especially the first episode. Oh god, this is becoming a thing. The first episode of Occultic 9. I know, right?
9, this is the thing.
Which was super, super fast-paced, and all the characters talked really fast, but in Occultic 9, it wasn't as metaphorical, it wasn't as symbolic. So
I don't think you have time to be metaphorical and symbolic when you're adapting an entire volume of a light novel into a single episode.
I didn't hear you say that. Please say it again. Please don't, because I'm not listening right now. That's a whole different thing. We're not going to deal with that. Okay, but the point is, I think Occultic 9 tried to do the same thing as the Tatami Galaxy, only they didn't do it as well, similarly to how you're describing Bunny Senpai. However, I did enjoy both because I just like that form of storytelling and I want to see more of it, but also what may color my opinion is that I did watch Occultic 9 before Tatami Galaxy. So maybe if I had watched it the other way around, I wouldn't have liked Occultic 9. But I might be biased.
Okay, so but you're not denying the fact that one of them tried to do something that the other also tried to do.
Yeah, and I'm saying like even if it really depends on the person, because the Monogatari series does do something unique and interesting, and like if you're really into that type of storytelling, wouldn't you want to see more shows with that type of unique element to it? Because like, yeah, you like Monogatari, but that's only one show. Don't you want to see more of that type of elements being implemented into other shows?
I do. I just want to see them implemented well,
I guess. So is it really your issue with Bunny Girl not that it's copying the elements of Monogatari, but that it's copying it poorly?
Yes, it is. It's doing it in a way that in my estimation is insulting to the Monogatari series.
Okay, so just if you're gonna copy it, you're gonna have to one up it, is what we're trying to say.
Exactly.
But
or
like,
at least not necessarily one up it, but at least be as good.
I mean, honestly, I think it's really just up to the individual person. And honestly, it's really up to, at least for me, like, what mood am I in when I'm watching this? Because, like, if I'm in an angry mood and someone's copying something, like, I'm not gonna watch it. But if I'm just, like, in a chill mood and I'm watching this and it's like, oh, I haven't seen this style in a long time, you know, I could watch this. I want to watch more of the style, and even though that this isn't as good as the one I watched before it, I am like nostalgic about it, so I want to watch it. So I think it's really subjective.
And that brings us right back to the question we had at the very beginning.
I guess so.
It's all subjective, people. All right. I think that's a good spot to end this.
Sure.
So, thank you all out there for dropping in to listen to us. We hope you enjoyed it because we always enjoy bringing this stuff to you. I, for one, am shocked that we were able to go for nearly an hour on this topic. If you want to check out previous episodes of the podcast, you can find us on YouTube, SoundCloud, and iTunes. If you want to keep up with what we're doing and have a little more fun, you can join our Discord server, become a member of our Facebook group, follow our Twitch channel, and visit our website. If you have any questions, comments, criticisms, or concerns on this or any episode, feel free to shoot us an email. Links to all of these things will be down below in the description. As always, I have been your host, Alex, and I will see you next time. Say goodnight, everybody.
Remember, critique after you watch it.
Girl, I critique
Wow.
Bunny before I watch it.
You haven't even watched it.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I think that was his way of throwing shade, not gonna lie.
It was.
Hey, Chinoda,
Yeah.
go fuck yourself.
Okay.
He already is.
Come on.